The United Kingdom, once regarded as one of the safest countries in Europe, is now facing an alarming rise in crime. From knife attacks in London to rising gang violence in Birmingham and Manchester, the UK is experiencing a surge in criminal activity that is shaking communities and straining law enforcement. While the UK has historically been seen as a beacon of law and order, a wave of violent crime, theft, and antisocial behavior has emerged in recent years. Today, we'll take a closer look at the causes behind this crime surge, its impact on society, and the efforts being made to restore safety. Act 1. The rise of violent crime. The United Kingdom has long been celebrated for its low levels of violent crime, but recent years have seen a disturbing shift. Violent crime, particularly knife crime, has become a growing concern in major urban centers. London, once regarded as a city of relative safety, now regularly sees headlines about stabbings and violent assaults. The rise of violent crime is not limited to London, but is spreading across the UK, affecting cities like Birmingham, Manchester, and Liverpool. In 2023 alone, knife crime in London reached record levels. According to the Office for National Statistics, there were over 15,000 recorded knife-related offences in England and Wales, an increase from previous years. The victims of these crimes are often young people, leading to a tragic loss of life and a growing fear among the public. Gang violence is another contributor to the rise in violent crime. Young people, particularly from deprived neighborhoods, are being drawn into gang culture, which thrives on drug trafficking, territorial disputes, and violent competition. The violence is becoming more brazen, with clashes between rival gangs taking place in public spaces, further eroding the sense of safety that many once took for granted. Act 2. The impact of knife crime and gang violence. Knife crime has become one of the most talked about issues in the UK today. Once seen as a relatively rare crime, it has now reached epidemic proportions. Stabbings, once considered shocking, have become part of everyday life in some areas, and the growing trend of youth violence has made headlines across the nation. In cities like London, knife crime has spread throughout neighborhoods, and young people have become both the perpetrators and the victims. It is not uncommon to hear of stabbings taking place in broad daylight or in busy public spaces like shopping centers, transport hubs, and parks. The fear of being caught up in a violent crime has led to people avoiding certain areas, and it's not just young people who are affected. Entire communities are living in fear of knife attacks. Gang violence is also on the rise in the UK. Criminal gangs, many of which are involved in the drug trade, are creating a climate of fear. These gangs often recruit young people, offering them money and status in exchange for their involvement in violent activities. With the increase in gang recruitment, particularly in urban areas, we are seeing more territorial disputes and violent encounters between rival groups. In many cases, these gangs are heavily armed and are using extreme violence to protect their territory, resulting in innocent lives being caught in the crossfire. Act 3. Social inequality, the root cause of crime. At the heart of the UK's crime surge lies a growing divide between the rich and the poor. Over the past few decades, wealth inequality has grown, leading to a sense of disenfranchisement among many young people. This divide is particularly visible in urban areas, where pockets of poverty and social deprivation exist alongside wealthier neighborhoods. The lack of opportunities, particularly for young people from deprived communities, has contributed to the rise of gang culture and violent crime. Many young people from these marginalized communities feel they have little to lose. In many cases, they are born into families already struggling with poverty, unemployment, and poor housing. The lack of investment in these communities has created an environment where crime flourishes. While the UK has a strong welfare system, it has been criticized for failing to reach the most vulnerable individuals, particularly in inner-city areas. The consequences of this inequality are severe. Young people without access to education, job opportunities, or family support are increasingly turning to gangs and criminal behavior as a way to survive. Gangs provide these young people with a sense of belonging and financial rewards that they may not find elsewhere. In this environment, violence becomes a way of life, and crime spirals further out of control. Act 4. Drugs, guns, and the escalation of violence. Drugs and firearms play a critical role in the rise of violence in the UK. The drug trade has long been a driving force behind gang-related crime. The rise in the use of Class A drugs like heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine has fueled turf wars between criminal gangs, who are often involved in the distribution and sale of these drugs. With the increasing demand for illicit substances, gangs have become more entrenched, and drug-related violence has risen sharply. The presence of drugs on the streets creates a cycle of criminal activity, as dealers, addicts, and law enforcement clash in battles over control of the market. In some cases, violence occurs between rival dealers, while in others, it happens as a result of theft or the need to secure financial resources to feed a drug habit. Similarly, firearms, which have been illegal in the UK for decades, are making their way into criminal hands. While the UK generally has strict gun laws, illegal firearms are still accessible, and there have been reports of gun violence in cities like London and Manchester. This has led to an increase in violent incidents where criminals are using firearms to settle disputes, rob individuals, or intimidate others. The combination of drugs and guns has made certain parts of the UK dangerous to live in, and many residents are left feeling powerless in the face of escalating crime. Act 5. Efforts to tackle crime in the UK. The UK government has responded to the rise in crime with several initiatives aimed at curbing violence and restoring order. One of the primary strategies has been increasing police presence in high crime areas. The government has promised to recruit thousands of new police officers to strengthen law enforcement and provide the resources necessary to tackle gang violence and knife crime. Additionally, a major focus has been on harsher penalties for those involved in gang-related activity and the possession of illegal weapons. New laws have been introduced to allow police to stop and search individuals suspected of carrying knives, and there have been efforts to crack down on the illegal sale of firearms and drugs. However, many critics argue that these measures are not enough to address the root causes of crime. While tougher policing and harsher penalties may help in the short term, they do not tackle the underlying issues of poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity. Experts argue that more needs to be done to prevent young people from turning to crime in the first place. This includes investing in education, social services, and community programs that provide alternatives to gang involvement and help break the cycle of violence. Act 6. The road ahead. Can the UK overcome the crime wave? Conclusion. The rise in crime is a serious issue that threatens to undo the progress the UK has made over the years. While the government's measures may help to curb violence, long-term solutions will require addressing the root causes of crime: inequality, unemployment, and lack of opportunities. Without tackling these issues head-on, the UK's crime problem may only get worse. The path forward will require collaboration between law enforcement, social services, local communities, and the government. By investing in prevention and ensuring that all citizens have access to education, stable jobs, and a safe environment, the UK can work toward reversing the trends that have led to this crisis. The UK stands at a crossroads. Will it continue down this path of rising crime, or will it take bold steps to restore peace and safety to its streets? Only time will tell.